Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Soccer Nostalgia blog. I have the pleasure to interview Mr. Nacho Solana. Mr. Solana is a Spanish photographer and a former journalist. This interview is separate from a podcast series. This video interview will serve as a companion piece to a written blog presentation on Atletico Madrid's first season under controversial president Jesus Gil, 1987-88 season. Hello, Nacho. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for the invitation, Saha.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself and your trajectory into football?
I am Nacho Solana. I am from Madrid, Spain. I spent 40 years there because now I am living in Mexico. For the last 20 years, I've been living in Mexico. I was a huge football fan. I always bought foreign magazines like Once, the French Once, Guerin Sportivo, Kicker in Germany. I started to learn some languages reading those magazines. Then I became a jersey collector, football jersey collector. I always went to Atletico Madrid or to Real Madrid Stadium, to both stadiums, even if I live in front of Santiago Bernabeu. My parents were friends of some players of both teams. And later, as I wasn't very good in football, I wasn't good enough to play, to be a star, to become a star. I started to play to have a role in journalists, in local journalists in Madrid. But I have to tell you that I didn't like the ambience of the. That was at the mid of the 80s, but I didn't like the ambience of the journalism. I didn't like that. I remember the first day I went into Radio Intercontinental, my first day of job. It was very I was very happy, but later I didn't like the behavior of the press. I didn't like that. So after a couple of years, I left that. I had some different jobs after being a football journalist. Well, I still carry on going to matches. In Madrid, I went to some European Cup finals. I remember going to Lyon in France with Atletico Madrid fans to see how Atletico Madrid loses against Dynamo Kiev in the Cup Winners' Cup. No, I became a photographer later. I always have a relation with Mexico. Since I was a boy, I used to come to Mexico, and 20 years ago, I decided to after Jesus Gil died, I decided to come to Mexico, and I because it was a year later. After a year later, Jesus Gil died. I came to Mexico, but it has nothing to do one thing with the other.
Let's go back in time to 1987.
Mhm.
What was the state of the affairs at Atletico Madrid following the death of President Don Vicente Calderone in the spring of 1987?
Okay, I was 26 years old at that time. Vicente Calderon was a gentleman. He was a very recognized person. He was like Bernabeu in Real Madrid. Vicente Calderon was more or less the same in Atletico Madrid. Because I guess you know, Atletico de Madrid, after the Civil War, it became the team of the army. It was Atletico Aviación. Later, Atletico Madrid left his partnership with the army years later, and then Vicente Calderón was the man who made Atletico Madrid big. At that time, as a fan, I can tell you Atletico Madrid was in the same stage than Real Madrid, and I think it was more Atletico Madrid than Barcelona at that time. I mean, at the 70s, at the 80s, Atletico Madrid was used to arrive the European Cup against Bayern Munich and won two or three leagues. It was a big team, but at the mid 80s, Atletico Madrid wasn't so strong. And yes, maybe it needed a change. So when Don Vicente died, Yes, a change of the team, of the philosophy of the team, maybe it would be good. It would be good received. At that time, Atletico Madrid was sports society. So when Calderon died, they have to make election. The partners of the club have to go to vote. As the president of a country, the partners of Atletico Madrid have to go. And there were four candidates, and Jesus Gil was one of them. As we are going to talk about Gil.
For anyone who may not know, can you describe Jesus Gil and his place in Spanish society and culture by 1987?
I think he wasn't very known. Even in 1982, he worked with Vicente Calderon. He was part of the direction of Atletico de Madrid in 1982 for 5 months, only for 5 months. Before that, he was a man of a small country in Castilla. He was a self-made man. He was a businessman, but he hasn't very good ways of behave. In 1969, he made like a sport club out of Madrid for the families to go to have fun with pools, with places to eat. And well, it happens a terrible thing, and 58 people died. So he went to jail. He went famous because of going to jail in 1969, and because he was the responsible of that deaths. But after about 2 years, General Franco, who was at the top of the government at that time, indulted him and he left the prison. I think then he wasn't very famous, and he needed to be famous. He wanted to earn power, and that was he focused himself in going to the presidents of the Atletico Madrid. That's what I think. I can't speak from other people, but I think he wasn't very famous at the time.
What you mentioned in 1969 was the San Rafael complex in
Yes,
Segovia. And
of course.
what happened was that the building collapsed, and it later turned out that it was built without any proper plans or architects. So he had cut some corners to construct a project.
I am sure he didn't want that to happen. Of course not. Of
Right.
course not. But his way of behaving was like, okay, it's finished. Okay, okay, we have to open this, and that tragedy happened. Not only 58 persons died, 142 persons was injured. So I am not a judge. I guess he wasn't. I'm sure he didn't want this to happen, but it happened, and the justice make him the responsible of that thing.
By 1987, he's 54 years old and try to make his way into the Atletico Madrid presidency. Can you walk us through how he won the election for the presidency of the club?
Well, the other three candidates were people known around Atletico Madrid ambience and around politic ambience. They've been ministers of the government, and Salvador Santos Campano was like the right hand of Vicente Calderon. So he wasn't the favorite. Gil wasn't the favorite to win the election. But, well, I remember when FC Porto won I don't know, 1 month earlier, FC Porto with Futre and Raba Mathieu won the European Cup final against Bayern Munich. Me and my friends, we were football fans, and we were excited about that Porto team, about that Futre, that Mathieu. When Jesus Gil said, if I am the president of Atletico Madrid, Paulo Futre is going to play in Atletico Madrid. And then he took a plane, he put Paulo Futre into the plane, and he came to Madrid, or he went to Madrid, and he made a party in a discotheque who was called Jacara. It was a very famous discotheque in Madrid. He made a party there, and he presented Futre. Okay, I think there is where he won the election.
There's always stories that he finally was able to entice Futre by sweetening the deal by including a yellow Porsche. Is that story true?
That story was true. He spent 450 million of pesetas. It was the coin of that time. It's like about $5 million at that time he paid for Futre. No one at that time Atletico Madrid wasn't a powerful team. It was more logic Futre to go into an English team or to an Italian team. So having Futre in Madrid, because he was physically in Madrid with Gil, for Atletico fans it was, and not only for Atletico fans, for everyone. Says like, okay, this guy is telling the truth, and this Futre is here, and he's going to play in the team. So Atletico fans, of course, vote for him. If that didn't happen, I can't tell you what would happen. Even if he was from a small village, I think he had more modern ideas for marketing ideas. I don't know who had the idea of try to buy Futre, but he did it, and he won the election.
Do you think he also garnered support for being vocal about his disdain of the corruption in the Spanish league? His strategy was to always to show himself like he's a warrior for
Yes,
against corruption
that's
and
yeah, yes.
basically claiming everything was geared to help Real Madrid and things like that.
Well, that's a legend. That didn't happen. That's the legend. That's the legend. It's like in politics. It's like in everything. When you want to win something, you have to say bad things about other people. In politics, and you say, I want to be the president of the country. I'm going to finish with the corruption. Later, he became the mayor of Marbella, and he said, I'm going to finish with the corruption. And he made the corruption bigger. So he used that to promote himself.
So it was believed that his constant attacks were to gain attention for Atletico in the press because he believed most of the press either covered Real Madrid or Barcelona. Do you think that was his strategy?
I think, as I've told you before, I think he had a modern way to get attention in the media, in the press. I think he had a modern idea of marketing for that time, and he wanted to use the team to promote himself. So he needed the team to be on the press. He needed the team to be successful to promote himself and to show himself as the savior of everything. So yes, I think that he did it well. He did it well because if one of the other three other candidates to the president had won the election, maybe Atletico de Madrid carried on a great way. So yes, so I was there. I remember perfectly. Yes, everybody, we were all the whole country were talking about this guy because he was so explosive. So of course, yes, he did it. He did at the beginning. I think he did it in a good way.
Yeah, and many critics even at the time accused him for using the club as a stepping stone to further his own ambitions in business. Was it customary at the time for other club presidents to attack other club presidents? Because he would often attack Real Madrid's Ramon Mendoza for stealing Hugo Sanchez from Atletico
No, no,
and
no. A ver,
Barcelona's Nunez. He would attack him too.
no. A ver, at the beginning, he had a very bad relation with Ramon Mendoza, but he needed to insult the president of Real Madrid to get attention. And Ramon Mendoza didn't steal Hugo Sanchez. Hugo Sanchez wanted to go to Real Madrid. Hugo Sanchez, the year before joining Real Madrid, was going to join Barcelona. When Maradona left Barcelona, the man was Hugo Sanchez. It was Terry Venables who said to the Barcelona president he didn't want Hugo Sanchez. Then he bought Steve Archibald instead of Hugo Sanchez. The thing is that When Atletico Madrid sells a player to Real Madrid, it's always a problem. When Real Madrid sells a player to Atletico Madrid, no one cares. In that case, even if it was 1985, Vicente Calderón had to sell Hugo Sanchez to Pumas of Mexico, and then Pumas sent Hugo Sanchez to Real Madrid for Atletico fans not to get angry. In the case of Ramon Mendoza, yes, Atletico Jesus Gil needed an enemy. All the politicians needs an enemy to say, I am better, I am going to fight against this enemy. At the end, they became friends. At the end, they help themselves. It's like Florentino and Laporta. Florentino is always helping Laporta. It's the same thing. At the end, they became friends. It was more controversial with Fernando Hierro. When Fernando Hierro was presented by Atletico de Madrid, then Ramon Mendoza, yes, he stole Hierro.
But that's in 89 years down the
Sí,
road.
yes.
So we already mentioned Paulo Futre.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the other transfers upon Jesus Gil taking over. And how was this looked upon at the time?
He was an innovator. He knew he needed new names, football stars. And yes, at the time, Atletico Madrid, even if he bought some older players, some of them were about on their 30s, they were all stars. And Atletico Madrid had a real good team. At the beginning of the season, Atletico Madrid was even at the end of the season, they finished third. So, yes, he bought Goicoechea. He was the central defender of Spain. He was the central defender of Athletic Bilbao. He was the guy who injured Maradona and Schuster, but he was a great player. He got a wonderful left leg. He was a great central defender, Goicoechea. He take back Marcos Alonso. He bought Lopez Ufarte. He was a very skillful player, Lopez Ufarte. Parra of Betis, and I don't remember. I think he bought another player. And tell
Yeah.
me, yes.
I was gonna say he also signed Brazilian midfielder Alemão from Botafogo.
No, Alemão was bought before.
Oh, he was already on the. Oh, he was
Yes,
already signed
he was
before.
already on the team. Yes,
How about Eusebio Sacristan and Juan Carlos of the Real Valladolid?
they were also in the team, but Julio Salinas, Juan Carlos, and Eusebio Sacristan was part of that Atletico team. A few years later, they were the three of them at the final of the European Cup with
Oh yes,
Barcelona against
Wembley.
Sampdoria. Yes,
Yes.
he sold those three players after his first year. His first year being the president, it was a mistake to sell all those three players to Barcelona. But answering your question, the expectation was great. Atletico fans were delighted with this new. As I've told you, the last 5 years of Atletico, 6 years of Atletico, it was a great team. Only Hugo Sanchez was the star of that team at the first half of the 80s. So yes, this new man with that character, he came, he said all those things, he bought all those players. Yes, the expectation was great, and the beginning of the team was very good at that season.
Let's discuss the man appointed to manage this new side, Cesar Luis Menotti, the 1978 World Cup winning Argentinian manager. What can you say about his appointment at this time?
Before he signed Menotti, Luis was the coach of Atletico Madrid. And the idea, because the fans wanted Luis to still be the coach of Atletico Madrid, the idea or Gil was forced to say yes to Luis, but they both have a very, very big argue, and both tell it publicly. They were very near to hit themselves because Luis Aragonés had a strong character too. They were two very strong characters. When Gil said to Luis, What do you think? You think you've won the European champion? You've won nothing. Get out of my way. And then he needed a famous name. The chosen was Menotti. But Menotti, his only success, I think, was winning that World Cup with Argentina, because later, yes, he's a very known man. He's a philosopher, whatever we want. But I think he hasn't an idea of a sport project to manage the team. He needed a name, and Menotti was a good name. And at the beginning, it worked.
In addition to the new signings,
Mhm.
let's go through and discuss the backbone of this new Atletico Madrid. In goal, we have Abel Racino. Behind him, you have Agustin Elduayan.
I'm going to tell you about something about Abel and Jesus Gil. A few years later, when Abel was the goalkeeper of Atletico de Madrid, Abel said, "The president has asked me which goalkeeper is good to buy it to replace me, being himself." That was Jesus Gil's style. He was a funny man. In some ways, he was a funny man. Yeah, of course. He had charisma. So, yes, El Duayen was a promise of Real Sociedad. At that time, Arconada was the best player of the world, maybe. And every other young goalkeeper who came out of Real Sociedad was bought from other teams. And El Duayen, but I think Abel was the best player.
In defense, you have Captain Arteche, the
Mhm.
smoker. You still have Tomas Renones in the national team.
Mhm.
In midfield, you have the likes of Jesus Landaburu, Roberto Marina, another veteran, Kike Ramos, and Kike Setien. Up front, you already mentioned Julio Salinas, not complemented with the likes of Futre and Lopez Ufarte.
It
A
was a
good
good
team on
team.
paper, yeah.
Yes, it was. No, on paper and I think on the reality, it was a good team too.
We have to mention Real Madrid started the season on fire. This is the Real Madrid of La Quinta del Buitre.
Mhm.
The first clash between the teams was on November 7th. And everyone took notice of this new Atletico as they defeated this great Real Madrid team 4-0 at the Bernabeu. Can you describe your memories from this encounter?
I was there. As I've told you before, I lived in front of Bernabeu Stadium. I used to go to both stadiums. I can tell you at that time, I support both teams, even if they think it's important. No, they were the teams of my hometown, and I wanted both teams to be strong. And I went to that match. I saw that match. I'm going to tell you something. Do you know who was the referee of that match?
I don't remember.
He's very famous at this moment. Jose, Jose, I'm going to tell you with a Spanish accent.
Yeah.
Jose Enriquez Negreira. Negreira,
Oh,
the
okay,
guy
okay,
of
yeah.
the Barcelona
Right,
affair,
right, yeah, yeah.
was the referee of that game. I don't want to say that Real Madrid loses because of Negreira. Not that match. Everything works perfectly for Atletico. It's one of those matches in the history of football that for one team everything works perfectly and the other team is blind, and that was that match. And they scored 4 goals, but they can't score 10 goals. So no, yes, it was a presentation of the team in the world. We are talking about a different world without internet, without social media, but yes, it was a success.
For this brief moment, was there a belief in the fans and even the press that Atletico could actually win the league title after this victory?
Okay, we are talking about the first year of Jesus Gil in the presidency of Atletico de Madrid, with very good players, with famous coach. Menotti likes beautiful football, attack football. He had good players to make that kind of game. Gil wasn't very known at the time for his polemics, or so everything was okay. It was a good start. So yes, there were a lot of expectations. That year, Atletico Madrid didn't play in the European tournament. Atletico Madrid didn't play European Cup or UEFA Cup or Cup Winners' Cup because in 1987, Atletico loses the King's Cup against Real Sociedad. So no, yes, it was good ambience. It was okay. Everything was okay. Gil was a legal president at the time. Everything was okay. Yes, good expectations.
However, following this, coming into the springtime, Atletico Madrid would fall off the pace somewhat as Real Madrid was just rampant, would build a large lead, and by springtime, it was really Real Sociedad who were challenging Real Madrid.
Madrid is a special town. Madrid has the 7 years of the week you can party. The 24 hours, the 7 years of the week you can have a party in Madrid. And it was said that minority and the players, but not only of Atletico, of every team, they were lost in the night, in the parties. They were said that Jesus Gil had an argue with Juan Carlos Arteche, the captain, the legend, one of the legends of Atletico Madrid. In the broadcast, in a radio broadcast, he had a polemic with Arteche. At that time in Spain, the radio stations were very, 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 very powerful, very, very powerful. Everything happens on the radio stations. And there was a man, Jose Maria Garcia, he was a journalist, he was a very powerful man. And he put Jesus Gil to talk with Arteche. Arteche said, okay, to have a drink 1 day a week, it doesn't matter. Ruben Cano, the guy who, the Atletico Madrid player, the Argentinian player who played in Spain national team, Ruben Cano was the technical secretary of Atletico Madrid. And it was said that Ruben Cano was the spy of Gil with the players. And that's when we started to see how can Gil can explode, because the team was in a good way, the players were good, the trainer, it was okay, but the polemic started to destroy that team. Yes.
In November, everything looked rosy. Cesar Luis Menotti looked to be pulling off a good job, and Atletico may actually have a chance for the title. However, when the sides met again in March, this time it was Real Madrid who defended Atletico 3-1 away from home. And we have to mention at this point, this was Atletico's sixth match without a win. And finally, Jesus Gil, on the next day, on the Monday, March 21st, he sacked Cesar Luis Menotti. He would be the first in a long line of many managers who would get the sack from Gil. Was there more to his sacking and than just the results? And what was the reaction of the fans at the time?
I have to say that at that time, that Real Madrid was a machine of win titles, at least in Spain, because they couldn't win the European Cup, but it was very difficult to defeat that team. It works perfectly. So what I think now, after 35 years, is that he should be more patient. At the end of the league, Atletico Madrid finished third. It was great. It was great because, okay, it was logical Real Madrid to win the league. It was a good start finishing third, but it's sacking Menotti was like, yes, another window to see inside how Gil was going to behave in the next years. So yes, Menotti was out, and then it came Jose Armando Ufarte. Ufarte is one of the legends of Atletico de Madrid. Ufarte, his parents were from Galicia in Spain, but he grew up in Brazil. He was a former Flamengo player. At that time, I mean, at the 60s, foreign players couldn't play in Spain. It was very common to go to South America to find players with some Spanish ascendants, and Ufarte was Spanish. He went to play to Atletico Madrid. He was a legend. He was a very skillful winger, and later he used to be not the main coach, but always in the technical part of Atletico. And he was there, and he'll say, okay, Menotti is out, who is here? He always needed a name. Ufarte was a good name. He was a good player, a good former player, and Ufarte was. But I think Ufarte didn't have the character to say, okay, I'm going to be the coach. He'll get out. No, he did what he wanted to do.
He was quickly dismissed on April 13th. There were some reports that Jesus Gil was thinking of appointing Jose Maria Maguregui for the following season, and Ufarte was fired because he refused to cooperate with Maguregui.
Maguregui was a former Athletic Bilbao player. He was a good, well, I didn't see him. Ufarte, yes, of course. I saw Ufarte playing live, but Maguregui, I'm not so old. So he was a good Athletic Bilbao player, but Maguregui was a coach for not to go down to second division. He always was training small teams, with all the respect to every team, but he was always a trainer of the half down of the league. At that time, he was at Celta de Vigo, and he was making a good season. Yes, it was going to be, and it was the coach for the next season for 88, 89. And Ufarte was, as I've told you, he wanted to be the coach, like all those kind of presidents. At that time, in the 70s, in the 80s, even in the 90s, the presidents of the teams, at least in Spain, I'm going to talk about Spain, they were all peculiar. They were all people who had money, who wanted power, who drink, who smoke, who he wasn't very on drinking or smoking, the truth. He was more, his mind was more in earning money, money and power. But Ramon Mendoza always have famous girlfriends. He want to drink, he loved to drink champagne or to have a yacht. They were all of them peculiar people. And Gil was more one of these kind of people, one of these kind of men of that time. That so he wanted to be the coach, or he didn't allow a guy, a footballer, or a former footballer to say what to do. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. It was his way.
And after sacking Ufarte, he was replaced with Antonio Briones until the end of the season.
Briones was an unknown man who made part of the technical staff. I didn't know who he was. I knew who he was when he replaced Forte. And I think he became the coach in some other parts of the history of Atletico, but he never was the main coach of Atletico or of some other, at least known team in first division.
At the end of the season, there was discontent amongst the players regarding Gil's style. What can you say about this?
I think he broke, but it's normal. I think he started well, but his explosive way of behavior, he didn't had the patience. Of course, he wasn't allow anyone to do what to do or to. He didn't allow a player to say, "Okay, president, let us work this way." He wasn't going to allow that, and he broke the toy. He should be more patient. We are talking about football, and we are talking about that season. I am not thinking on not thinking on what happened later, because okay, we all know what happened later, but being at that time, he didn't have the patience. I am sure some people said to him, some former Atletico players said to him, okay, President, stay calm, we are going, no, he broke the tie. That's what he did.
Paulo Futre is regarded the emblematic player of the Hill era. How was he regarded by the fans in his first season?
I don't know if what I'm going to say is proper or not, but I have a friend. He was absolutely fan of Atletico Madrid. He was sick about Atletico Madrid. I have photographs with him. It's a long time. I don't know what's going on with his life. He was half English and half Spain, but he was grown up in Madrid. He was half English and half Spanish because his father was English. He was a huge fan of football, but he was sick, absolutely sick about Atletico Madrid. And he was a straight guy. So he once told me, Nacho, can you imagine sleeping with Futre and waking up with Futre? Futre was because the beginning of Futre too, he was a great player. He was an absolutely great player. He was a fantastic player. He's not very known in the football. I think Futre is better than Messi. Futre is great. He was great. That first year, both Real Madrid and Barcelona wanted Futre because we knew Futre because of that final against Bayern Munich with FC Porto. But the truth is, we didn't know how Futre played. When Futre started to play with Atletico Madrid, he was great. He was absolutely great. And we were all shocked with Futre. Not only Atletico fans, all Spanish fans were shocked with Futre. So, yes, he said, I think when Gil bought Futre, he said he was going to be the Di Stefano of Atletico Madrid. It was going to start a new era. And the thing that happened is that Futre became, I don't know if friend of Gil, but he made a commitment there in Atletico Madrid. In 1994, I think Futre was very near to play in Real Madrid, but at the end, Futre said, "No, I can't do this." But he was great. The fans were in love with Futre. We are all in love with Futre. We all want, at that time, it was impossible to find the jersey, the football jerseys with a number on it. We all wanted, I wanted an Atletico Madrid shirt with number 10. I had one with number 3, an original one, but I wanted the number 10. We all wanted that jersey. If there were available that jerseys at that time, they will send 1 million jerseys.
Limited just to this first season, what was the fans' reaction and beliefs on Jesus Gil's handling of the team?
I am thinking I am now in 1988 without knowing what happened later. It was still a belief that it can be a good team with success. We didn't know very much. He showed his behavior, but he had charisma. He was a countryman, self-made man. At that time, it was a funny guy. It was a funny guy. What he said, it was funny for the people, for the press. It was for the press. He was great. Not only sport press, for every press, he'll sell newspapers. If you put a photograph of Gil in a TV program or in a newspaper, you know you are going to sell a lot. So he was a good received by the press. He wasn't present as a bad man. He was like a show. He was a showman. He was a showman. So the fans of Atletico, I think at that summer of 1988, they still have faith that that man was going to make a good team. And of course, attacking Real Madrid, attacking the powerful or it's a success for you. So he carried on attacking Real Madrid. So Atletico fans think this man is going to finish with Real Madrid, blah, blah, blah. That's it. So it's still faith. I think still faith at that time.
In closing,
Mhm.
after this initial season, could you even begin to foresee what would come in the next 17 years?
Well, from the beginning, he said that politic of sport society, sport club wasn't available for the future. I can tell you that even now, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao, and Osasuna de Pamplona are still sport clubs. Maybe Barcelona for not a long time, because maybe Barcelona is going to become a society, a private society. But from the beginning, Gil said, this is not available. We have to be a private society. We have to make a law. The government make. I'm talking less. It's the first time I try to talk with Gil's voice in English. Okay, that's fine. He said, "No, we are going to finish with this. We will have to become a private society. The government have to change the law." So he saw his idea to get the team to turn into a private society and to become the owner of the team. But because I have to say, maybe in other countries people don't know, at that time Atletico Madrid and right now Real Madrid or Barcelona or Bilbao or Osasuna belong to the partners. So no, Qatar or Saudi Arabia or whoever can't buy Real Madrid, can't buy Barcelona, can't buy Athletic Bilbao, or can't buy Osasuna. Even at the time, they can't buy, no one can't buy Atletico Madrid, but at the end, he didn't buy Atletico Madrid. He just changed the law and he kept the team. And now his son is the owner of Atletico Madrid without paying a coin. But yes, he showed that. He said, we have to change this model. Sports societies can't carry on. And maybe, I tell you, to be honest, I was 26, 27 years old. I didn't see myself, I didn't see exactly what he wanted to do, but I am sure some other people of my age or older than me knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he did it. And now there is a judge sentence, a judge statement that said that Jesus Gil and his son Enrique Cerezo stole the team of the partners, but it was prescribed. So now they are the owners of the team. I can't understand how Atletico fans or older Atletico fans, because maybe the young ones doesn't know, I can't understand how Atletico fans still supports the business of the man. These people, Gil and his family, kidnapped the team. The team is not, from 1992, the team is not Atletico Madrid, it's the business of the Gil family. I can understand that Atletico Madrid fans and the press did nothing. They did nothing. Only, I think, 10 fans of Atletico Madrid went against Gil because the way he kept the team, he stole the team. Now Atletico Madrid is the business of Miguel Ángel Gil Marín and Enrique Cerezo. They are the owners. They do whatever they want, and they are going to sell the team soon.
With that, I would like to thank you for this interview. And I would urge everyone to please read the main blog article as well for more detail. The link is included in the video upload description along with our respective contact information. So, Nacho, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on football history.
Thank to you, thank to the audience, thank to you for the opportunity. Anyone want to contact me on social media, you can please give my Instagram or my Facebook, and it's very interesting what you do.
Thank
Seihan,
you. Appreciate it. Thank
nice to
you.
meet you. You are a very polite person.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.